She went to a blind date in her pajamas, not knowing he was a count who fell in love at first sight. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The needle slipped from Amélie's fingers and clinked to the wooden floor. She blinked, trying to bring the stitched bodice back into focus. The lamps in Madame Fournier's workshop had been lit for hours. The shadows on the walls had grown longer, and the air smelled of wax and tired people. "Enough, Amélie!" Madame Fournier's sharp voice cut through the soft murmur of thread and cloth. "Your eyes are no good after this hour. You'll ruin the seam and I shall have to pay for it." Amélie straightened and rubbed the back of her neck. "I can finish the hem, madame," she said. "It will not take long." "It will take twice as long with your head nodding like that," madame replied. She was a compact woman with quick hands and an even quicker tongue. "Go home, you already stayed later than the others." At the long table, Lucy snickered and nudged Margot with her elbow. "Hear that?" Lucy murmured just loud enough. "Or you will fall asleep on the satin and dream yourself into a countess." Margot laughed softly. "Leave the countesses to the ones who own shoes without holes, Lucy," Amélie said, though there was no real sharpness in her voice. She reached for her worn shawl hanging on the peg. Lucy jumped up and caught her arm. "Do not go yet, we have something to tell you." Madame Fournier clapped her hands once. "If it is something that does not involve a needle, you may tell her tomorrow," she said. "I am closing the door in 5 minutes. Go gather your nonsense outside." Lucy dragged Amélie toward the back, where the doorway led to a narrow courtyard and the cold evening air. Margot followed, tying a scarf around her neck. As soon as the door closed behind them, Lucy turned, eyes bright. "You are not going to bed like a grandmother tonight, Amélie." "I am not a grandmother," Amélie said. "I am 23. I am simply tired." "That is what grandmothers say," Lucy insisted. "Listen, we have arranged something for you." Amélie narrowed her eyes. "If it is another card game where you cheat and then pretend it is fate, I shall go to bed and lock the door." Margot stepped in quickly. "It is not a game. It is an evening, a meeting." "A meeting," Amélie repeated. "I meet enough people when they come to have their sleeves let out." "A man, idiot," Lucy said. "We have arranged a meeting with a man." Amélie stared, then laughed. "No, yes," Lucy insisted. "Henri from the bank. He sometimes comes to my uncle's café. He is shy and he blushes every time someone speaks to him. Perfect for you." "Thank you for the compliment," Amélie said dryly. "Why would this Henri want to meet me?" "Because we told him you were kind and sensible and had good hands," Margot said, "and because he is tired of girls who only care about hats." "You told him about my hands?" Amélie asked. "That is romantic," Lucy waved that away. "We told him you would meet him tonight at 7 at a restaurant." "A restaurant?" Amélie felt her back tighten again. "What restaurant? You know I cannot afford." "We have already spoken to the owner," Margot said quickly. "Not a grand feast, just a little table. You may drink a coffee or 1 glass of wine, he will pay for his own." "In other words," Amélie said, "you have decided my evening for me." "We are saving your life," Lucy declared. "Look at you. You work, you sleep, you work. Soon you will forget how to speak of anything that is not a hem or a sleeve." Amélie looked from one to the other. Their faces were eager, shining in the weak light from the workshop window. "You could have asked me," she said. "We knew you would say no," Margot replied, not at all ashamed. "So we did not ask. We announced." Lucy bounced on her feet. 7 o'clock, Restaurant L'Étoile, on Rue des Capucins. You know it. You have stared at it often enough on your way home." Amélie did know it. She passed by its tall windows sometimes and glimpsed people inside, men in dark suits, women in dresses that would never brush the floor of Madame Fournier's workshop. "That restaurant is too fine," she said. "For you are playing a joke on me." "It is not too fine," Lucy insisted. "Henri goes there sometimes with his colleagues. They are not counts, they are clerks. You will see. It is not so grand." "It is grand enough that I do not belong there," Amélie replied. Margot stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Amélie, you do not have to marry him. You do not even have to like him. Just go. Drink 1 glass of wine. Laugh once. Remember that you are not only a pair of hands with a needle." The courtyard was cold. The stones under her shoes felt hard and thin. Her shoulders ached. 1 glass of wine, Lucy repeated. "If he is dull, you may leave. If he is unbearable, I give you permission to throw your wine at him and run. But go." Amélie hesitated. "What if he expects me to be charming? Then he will be disappointed," Lucy said. "Go home, change. We shall be watching from a distance to be sure he arrives. I swear on my mother's apron." "Your mother does not wear an apron," Amélie said. "Then I swear on Margot's," Lucy said. "Now run. It is already 6:30. They kissed her cheeks, one on each side, and pushed her gently toward the street. "Go," Margot said. "Do not think too much, or you will talk yourself out of it." Amélie walked away, their laughter following her. The sky above Lyon was already darkening, lamps beginning to glow one by one. The streets between the workshop and her lodging were familiar, the bakery with its closed shutters, the square where children played when it was not so late, the little church with its door half open. She climbed the narrow stairs to her room and let herself in. The space was small. A bed, a chair, a cracked mirror, a trunk at the foot of the bed. The air smelled faintly of soap and fabric. She sat on the bed and looked at her hands. The faint red lines from the needle were still crossed on her fingertips. "A meeting," she murmured, "with a banker who blushes." She imagined him, stiff collar, smug smile, fingers counting coins even at the table. She heard Lucy's voice again. "We knew you would say no." She rose and opened the trunk. Inside, folded carefully, were her 2 good dresses. One grey, one faded blue. Both had been worn to weddings, funerals, mass, and any other occasion that demanded she look presentable. She touched the blue one. It had a patch near the hem that she had done herself, neat but visible. At the bottom of the trunk lay her night clothes, a cotton pajama with small buttons, worn soft with washing. She had made it from leftover fabric that no client wanted. It was plain but comfortable, honest cloth without pretension. She stared at it for a long moment. "A banker," she repeated. "At l'Étoile, where women wear dresses worth more than my yearly wage." The urge to laugh bubbled up bitter and sharp. "Of course they chose that place," she said to the empty room. "So when I fail to shine, they may say, 'We tried, but she is not made for such things.'" She sat back on her heels. "What if I do not shine at all?" she whispered. Her eyes moved from the blue dress to the pajama. Slowly, almost without admitting to herself what she was doing, she reached for the pajama and drew it out. She held it up. It was clean. The cotton was soft. It was not torn or stained. It was simply not meant to be seen beyond these walls. If this evening was a joke, she thought, then perhaps I shall be the one to laugh first. She unbuttoned her day dress and let it fall, then slipped into the pajama. The cotton brushed her skin like a familiar hand. She buttoned it up to her throat. Over it, she pulled on her worn wool coat. The hem of the pajama fell just above her ankles, hidden when she stood still but peeking out when she walked. She pinned her hair up quickly, the way she did every morning for work. No ribbon, no powder on her cheeks. She looked at herself in the cracked mirror. "You are foolish," she told her reflection. "You are tired and foolish." But underneath the words was a small, stubborn spark. If the banker was kind, he would laugh and forgive. If he was cruel, her pajamas would only reveal his character more clearly. She tied her scarf around her neck, blew out the candle, and stepped back into the corridor. On the street, the air was cold enough to bite her cheeks. She drew the coat tight over her chest and walked toward Rue des Capucins. The closer she came to l'Étoile, the more her steps slowed. From half a block away, she could already see the restaurant. Light poured from its windows, warm and golden. Inside, heads bent over plates, hands lifted glasses. A pair of men stood at the door smoking, their laughter drifting into the street. Amélie's stomach tightened. "You can still turn back," she murmured. Then she thought of Lucy and Margot waiting somewhere, watching from a corner like mischievous ghosts. She lifted her chin. "No," she said softly. "You will not be the coward they expect." She reached the door. One of the smoking men stepped aside, eyeing her coat and shoes with an expression she could not quite read. The maitre d' swooped forward at once, his napkin over his arm, his moustache neatly trimmed. "Good evening, mademoiselle," he said. His eyes traveled quickly from her hair to her shoes. For a moment his polite smile wavered, then he caught it again. "May I help you?" "I have a meeting," Amélie said, "with Monsieur Henri from the bank. He was to be here at 7. The maitre d' blinked. He did not know any bank clerks by name. He knew the merchants, the lawyers, the men with fat wallets and loud voices. "Of course," he said after a heartbeat. "Perhaps he is already seated. Please come in." She stepped past him into the warmth of the room. The shift was like stepping onto a stage. Voices dipped. Forks paused. A woman in a hat with pale feathers looked up and stared openly at Amélie's coat, then at the bit of cotton peeking beneath it when she moved. Amélie felt the heat rush to her face. She tugged her coat lower. "Do not run," she told herself. "If you run, they will truly believe you are a thief." She let the maitre d' guide her toward a small table near the back wall. "Will you be dining, mademoiselle?" he asked. I'm waiting for someone," she said. "Perhaps just a coffee." "Very good," he replied. "I shall bring the menu." He left her there, alone at the table, with a napkin folded like a swan and a glass sparkling in front of her. She folded her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. On the other side of the room, Etienne Morel watched. He had come to L'Étoile because his mother insisted he should be seen. "Lion must remember your face," she had said. "You are not in Paris now. People must know your name here." He had obeyed out of habit. He wore a dark suit, his tie knotted in the precise way his valet preferred. His plate was half finished. The food tasted like nothing. His mind had wandered to letters he needed to write, speeches he might have to give one day, voices in salons that always sounded the same. Then the door opened, and she entered. At first he saw only a slim figure in a worn coat. Then, as she moved, the hem of a simple cotton pajama swayed around her ankles. Not a dressing gown disguised as a dress, not a fashion gone wild. It was plainly what it was, something meant for sleep, for privacy, brought into the most public place she had likely set foot in. He saw her stiffen as the room's attention turned toward her. He saw her swallow, lift her chin by a fraction, and follow the maitre d' with as much dignity as if she wore silk. Intrigued, he watched the maitre d' leave her with the menu. The man's back was slightly rigid, his polite mask thinner than usual. Etienne could almost hear the thoughts across the room. How strange, how amusing, how improper. He looked at the woman herself, instead of at the spectacle she accidentally created. She was not beautiful in the polished way he was used to seeing. Her hair was pinned up carelessly, a few strands escaping at her temples. Her face was tired. There were shadows under her eyes. But when she glanced around the room, trying to pretend she did not notice the stairs, there was a resolute line in her jaw that caught his attention. She reminds me of someone stepping into deep water, he thought. Afraid, but refusing to grasp the shore. He realized his fork had stopped halfway to his mouth. At a table nearby, two merchants chuckled softly. "Did you see her?" one murmured. "Nightclothes here, people have lost all sense." Etienne set his fork down. He watched her open the menu, her eyes skimming down the list, her lips pressing tighter with every item and price. She is waiting for someone, he guessed, someone who has not come. The thought irritated him. Who would ask such a woman to meet in a place like this and then abandon her? The maitre d' returned to take her order. Etienne saw the stiffness in the girl's shoulders. "Just a coffee, please," she said, her voice barely carrying. The maitre d' nodded and walked away. She did not belong here, that much was obvious. Yet she had come anyway, and now sat among all these polished people waiting for a man who had likely decided she was not worth the trouble. He found himself pushing back his chair. "Sir?" the waiter at his elbow asked. "I shall not need dessert," Etienne said. "Thank you." He stood, took his napkin from his lap, and folded it beside his plate. For a moment he hesitated. This is foolish, he thought. You do not know this woman, you have no reason to involve yourself. Then he remembered the way the merchants had laughed. He walked toward her table. Amélie saw the tall gentleman crossing the room before she realized he was coming toward her. Her heart jumped. Perhaps this is Henri, she thought. Perhaps he sent someone else to speak first. The gentleman stopped at her table. He had dark hair brushed neatly back, a face that looked as if it had been taught not to show too much. His eyes, though, were unexpectedly gentle. "Good evening," he said. She gripped the edge of the table. "Good evening, monsieur," she replied. He inclined his head slightly. "I hope you will forgive me for disturbing you," he said. "You seem to be waiting for someone." Her cheeks burned. "Yes," she said. He must be delayed." The gentleman glanced toward the door, then back at her. "I see," he said. "May I sit for a moment? If you would prefer to be alone, I shall not insist. The words were careful, respectful, no mockery in his tone. Amélie hesitated, then nodded toward the empty chair. Please, she said, the table is too large for me alone. He sat, placing one hand lightly on the tablecloth, as if afraid of startling her. I am Etienne, he said. May I know your name? Amélie, she said. Saying her name in this place felt strange, as if the walls might echo it. It is a pleasure to meet you, Mademoiselle Amélie, he said. She searched his face for signs of amusement, but found none. You must think this is very foolish, she said abruptly. A woman in... She glanced down at her hidden pajamas. In such clothing. Here. He followed her glance. He had already seen the cotton peeking from beneath her coat. I think, he said slowly, that it takes a certain kind of courage to walk into a room like this when one does not feel entirely dressed for it. That is a polite way to say I look ridiculous, she said. A truthful way would be to say you look honest, he replied. She blinked at him. Honest? She repeated. You are not trying to be someone else, he said. Most people here are. She stared at him for a moment, then let out a breath that was almost a laugh. You speak as if you are not one of them, she said. Tonight, I feel more like an observer than a participant, he said. Tell me, if you do not mind, why did you come? Because I am foolish, she said again, and because my friends have more imagination than sense. He tilted his head. Friends arranged this. 2 of them, she said. They said a banker wanted to meet me. At this place. They said they would be watching from somewhere to make sure he came. And they chose this restaurant, he said. Yes, she said. I suspect they wanted to see how a seamstress would look among so much crystal. A seamstress, he repeated, as if tasting the word. You sew, then? All day, she said. Dresses for women who dine in places like this. Sleeves for women who never lift a needle. And tonight, he said, you sit where they sit, and I sweat with fear where they are at ease, she replied. He smiled, a small, almost hidden smile. I do not see fear, he said. Only someone determined not to run. The coffee arrived. The waiter placed it in front of her and glanced again at her coat, then at Etienne. His expression shifted at once to deferential. He recognized quality when he saw it. Will Monsieur require anything? The waiter asked. No, thank you, Etienne said. We are quite content. We. The word hung in the air for a moment, fragile and warm. Amélie wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, grateful for its heat. You came here alone? Etienne asked. Yes, she said. Perhaps that was unwise. Or perhaps it was brave, he said. She took a breath, then another. You did not answer, she said. Are you one of them? One of whom? He asked. The people who belong here, she said. The ones who do not even notice the napkins are folded like birds because they have never seen a napkin folded like anything else. He looked around the room, at the polished tables and the gleaming glasses. I know this world, he said. I have eaten in rooms like this since I was a boy. But belonging is another matter. What does that mean? She asked. It means, he said quietly, that I am expected to feel at home where I sometimes feel most confined. She studied him more closely. The cut of his suit, the quality of the cloth, the way the staff bowed slightly when they passed his table. He was not merely a clerk or a modest merchant. You are important, she said slowly. In some eyes, he said. In others, I am merely another man taking up space at a table. Not in mine, she said before she could stop herself. In mine, you are the man who decided to speak to a woman everyone else is staring at. He looked at her with a tenderness that surprised even him. You do not know me, he said. Nor you me, she replied. Then let us begin, he said. Tell me about your day, Mademoiselle Amélie. Not the grand version, the true one. She hesitated, then laughed softly. The true one is not fit for a restaurant like this, she said. I pricked my finger 3 times. I listened to Lucy complain about a client's perfume. I stitched the same braid onto the same sleeve for what felt like years. I wanted to throw it out the window. Why did you not? He asked. Because Madame Fournier would have thrown me after it, she said, and because I like to eat. Eating is a convincing reason, he said. She sipped her coffee. The warmth spread through her chest. And you? She asked. What did you do today? Wrote letters, he said. Listened to men speak at length about matters they barely understand. Sat in meetings where everyone pretended to agree, while each one calculated how it might benefit him alone. "That sounds worse than braid on a sleeve," she said. "In some ways, it is the same work," he replied. "Endless repetition, very little beauty." She smiled. "It seems our worlds are not so different," she said. "In some ways," he agreed. They fell into a comfortable silence for a few breaths. Her shoulders relaxed without her noticing. The edges of the room blurred a little. She almost forgot the cotton at her ankles. After a while, she glanced at the door again. "He is not coming," she said quietly. "No," Etienne said. "I do not think he is." She looked down at her coffee. "I should be angry," she said. "At him, at my friends, at myself." "Are you?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "But mostly I am embarrassed. I thought I could walk in here and laugh at everything. Instead, I feel like a girl who has wandered onto the wrong stage." He leaned forward slightly. "Then let us change the play," he said. "How?" she asked. "By deciding that the man who failed to appear does not deserve a place in this scene," he said, "and that it is not you who should be ashamed, but he." She stared at him, stunned by the simple firmness of his tone. "You speak as if you know what is right," she said. "I know this much," he replied. "If a man calls a woman to meet him and then leaves her alone to be stared at, he is not worthy of her time." Her throat tightened unexpectedly. "You speak kindly, monsieur," she said. "I do not know why." "Because it is the least I can do," he said. "After watching you walk into this room as if you were facing a firing line." She gave a short laugh. "It felt like that," she said. "I almost turned around at the door." "I am glad you did not," he said. He watched her for a moment, then took a breath. "Amélie," he began, "there is something I would like to ask." She looked up at him. His eyes were serious now, no longer light. "Yes," she said. "I know this evening did not unfold as you expected," he said. "Nor as I did. But I find that I would like very much to see you again. Not here, perhaps. Somewhere simpler. A café by the river. A walk in the square. If you would consent." Her heart stumbled. "See me again?" she repeated. "If you prefer to forget this evening entirely, I shall respect that," he said. "But if you do not, I would be honored." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "This is foolish," she murmured. "We do not even know each other." "That can be remedied," he said. "I am willing to learn." She stared at the tablecloth, at the pattern embroidered along the edge. Her fingers traced it lightly. "Who are you, monsieur?" she asked softly. "Truly. Not just someone who eats in restaurants like this. My friends told me I would meet a bank clerk. Instead, I find myself speaking to a man who says he sits in meetings and listens to speeches." He hesitated. The moment he had been avoiding all evening stood before him now, as solid as a door. "My name is Etienne Morel," he said quietly. Etienne Morel?" A booming voice interrupted from the entrance. The room turned as one. A stout gentleman with a red face had just come in, shrugging off his coat. "By heaven, it is you!" the man cried. "Count Etienne Morel, back from Paris at last." The maitre d' nearly dropped the bottle he was carrying. He hurried forward, bowing deeply. "Your Excellency," he said, "we did not know you would honor us tonight." A murmur spread through the room like wind through leaves. "Count Morel, from Paris." Chairs scraped as people turned to look. Eyes that had already been curious now fixed on the table where the Count sat with the girl in the plain coat and the hint of cotton at her ankles. Amélie felt the blood drain from her face. "Count." The word echoed in her mind, hollow and loud. She looked at the man across from her, at his calm face, his careful hands, the deference in the staff's eyes. A count. And she had sat there in her nightclothes, speaking to him as if he were any other man. Shame surged up so fast it stole her breath. She pushed back her chair. The legs scraped loudly against the floor. The sound cut through the murmurs. "I must go," she whispered. "Amélie," Etienne began, reaching out. She slipped from his grasp, barely remembering to grab her scarf. Her vision blurred as she crossed the room. The faces around her were a sea of eyes and half-hidden smiles. The door seemed too far. She burst into the cold night air, her heart pounding as if it meant to tear free. And as the doors swung shut behind her, Etienne pushed back his chair, every eye in the room on him, waiting to see what the Count would do. Amélie ran without seeing where she put her feet. The cold bit through her coat, but she felt nothing. The streets were a blur of stones and shadows. When she reached her building, she fumbled with the key twice before she managed to get the door open. Inside her small room, she leaned against the door and slid down until she was sitting on the floor. "A count," she whispered. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The scene replayed itself again and again. The man calling out, "Count Etienne Morel." The maitre de bowing, the murmurs, the faces turning, her plain coat, the hem of her pajama. She buried her face in her hands. "Idiot," she said. "Fool." For a long time she sat there, listening to the muffled sounds of the city outside. A cart rolled by. Someone laughed in the street. Life went on, indifferent to one seamstress who had made a spectacle of herself. When she finally undressed, she could not bring herself to put the pajama back on. She folded it into the trunk and shut the lid, as if she could lock the memory away with it. Sleep came late. When it did, it was restless and sharp, full of laughing faces and men calling her name in voices that did not belong to anyone she knew. Morning brought no comfort. Her head felt heavy, as if the shame had weight. She washed quickly, pulled on her work dress, and twisted her hair up with stiff fingers. For a moment she thought of pretending to be ill, but missing work meant missing pay, and missing pay meant missing meals. "You will endure," she told herself. "You always do." She walked to the workshop with her eyes on the ground. Every sound seemed louder. Every laugh on the street felt like it might be about her. When she pushed open the door to Madame Fournier's, the familiar smell of starch and cloth surrounded her. The other girls were already there, some sitting at the long table, others standing by dress forms. Conversation dipped when she stepped inside. "There she is," someone whispered. Amélie straightened her shoulders and crossed the room. "Good morning," she said. A chorus of greetings followed, but the tone was different. Curiosity hummed under the words. Lucy and Margot were not there. Madame Fournier came out from the back with a bundle of fabric in her arms. "You are late by 5 minutes," she said sharply. "You know I do not tolerate—" She broke off, studying Amélie's face more closely. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "Some," Amélie said. "I'm sorry about the 5 minutes. It will not happen again." Madame Fournier sniffed. "Sit, we have work. Madame Leroy wants her dress finished by Thursday, as if I could conjure an extra pair of hands from the sleeves." Amélie sat at the table and took up the needle. The rhythm of sewing usually soothed her, but today every stitch felt like a struggle. The others tried at first to hold their tongues. The air was thick with unsaid things. It did not last. Louise, a girl with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, cleared her throat. "So," she said, pretending to be casual, "did anyone dine at L'Étoile last night?" Several heads turned. Amélie's fingers tightened on the fabric. "No one," Louise went on. "Ah, what a pity. I heard there was a charming little scene." "Louise," another girl murmured warningly. "What?" Louise asked. "Can I not tell a story? I have it from my cousin who works in the kitchen. He said there was a girl who came in wearing her nightclothes." A few of the girls gasped and laughed softly. "A nightgown?" one asked. "Not exactly," Louise said. "A sort of pajama. Cotton. Plain as bread." She marched in among all the ladies in their silk, sat down, and waited for a gentleman who did not even come. Amélie's mouth went dry. Madame Fournier looked up from her work. "Louise, keep your eyes on the seam," she said. "Gossip does not pay your wages." Louise ignored her. "And then," she continued, lowering her voice for effect, "she happened to sit with a man who turned out to be a count, a real one, from Paris." Everyone stared. "My cousin says you could have cut the air with a knife." The room went very quiet. Amélie kept her head down. The needle blurred. Louise glanced at her, then back at the others. "Imagine," she said, "sitting in your pajama with a count. I wonder what she thought she was doing." "That is enough," Madame Fournier said, more firmly this time. "But, Madame," Louise protested, "it is the talk of half the street. They say she—" "I said," Madame Fournier repeated, "enough." Her tone brooked no argument. Louise flushed and bent over her work again. The silence that followed was worse than the chatter. A few minutes later, the door opened. Lucy and Margot slipped in together, cheeks red from the cold. "Ah, you are late," Madame Fournier snapped. "If this continues, I shall cut an hour from your pay." "Forgive us, Madame," Margot said quickly. "There was something we had to speak of on the way." "You may speak with your needles now," Madame Fournier said. "Sit." Lucy glanced at Amélie as she took her seat. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Amélie looked away. Lucy's shoulders sagged. The hours crept by. The rhythm of the workshop resumed, but it was strained. Every time the door opened, Amélie's heart jumped. During the brief midday break when the others stepped into the courtyard to eat their bread and drink their weak coffee, Lucy tugged at Amélie's sleeve. "Come," she whispered. "We must talk." "I have nothing to say," Amélie replied. "You must," Margot said softly, joining them. "Please." They pulled her toward a corner of the courtyard, behind a stack of crates, where they could speak without being heard easily. Lucy wrung her hands. "Amélie, we heard," she began. "We heard about last night." "I am not deaf," Amélie said. "I heard as well, all morning." Lucy flushed. "We did not know it would be like that," she said quickly. "We truly believed Henri would come. He told us he would. We thought—" "You thought it would be amusing," Amélie cut in. "A seamstress in a fine restaurant. A banker and his blushing cheeks. Something to laugh about later if it went badly." "We thought you might like him," Margot said. "We thought you would enjoy one evening that was not work and sleep. We did not want to hurt you. And yet," Amélie said, "I have never felt more hurt in my life." Margot's eyes filled with tears. "We are sorry," she whispered. "Truly. We did not know about the Count. We did not plan that." "So that part is pure accident," Amélie said. "What comfort." Lucy stepped closer. "Laugh at us if you must," she said. "Call us fools, but do not turn away from us. We are your friends." "Friends," Amélie repeated. "Friends do not send a girl in her nightclothes to a place where she will be stared at, like a stray cat in a church." "We did not tell you to wear your pajama," Lucy protested. "You chose that yourself." "Yes," Amélie said, "because I thought it was all a joke. I thought, if they wish to make me ridiculous, I shall be ridiculous on my own terms. It seems I misjudged how far the joke would travel." She pressed a hand to her chest. "Do you know what it feels like?" she asked quietly. "To realize that every person in the room is watching you and thinking, 'Look at her, she does not belong here'? Do you know what it feels like to hear someone call a man Count while you sit there in cotton stitched from scraps?" Silence met her words. Only the faint clatter of dishes from a neighboring kitchen drifted over the wall. Lucy swallowed hard. "No," she admitted, "I do not know. But I can imagine, and it makes me ashamed." Amélie looked at them, at their open, worried faces. She loved them. She had laughed with them for years. They had shared bread and secrets and complaints about clients. "I do not know how to be angry with you," she said slowly. "Not properly, but I do know that you were careless with me, and I have so little to spare." Margot wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "We will make it right," she whispered. "Somehow." "You cannot unsay what has been said," Amélie replied. "You cannot stop tongues once they begin to wag. All you can do is learn to hold yours before the next idea crosses it." The bell rang inside, calling them back to work. Lucy reached for her arm. "Amélie." "Let go," Amélie said gently. "We must sew. That is one thing that still makes sense." They returned to the workshop. The rest of the day passed in a blur of thread and fabric and tired eyes. While she stitched, in another part of the city, Etienne was standing before his mother. He had returned home late the previous night, after lingering outside L'Étoile longer than was necessary, hoping foolishly that Amélie might still be nearby. She had vanished into the city. Now, in the bright drawing room of the Morel residence, he faced Madame Morel's icy calm. "Explain," she said. She stood near the mantel, her hands resting lightly on it. Her dress was immaculate. Not a hair was out of place. "Explain what, mother?" he asked, though he knew very well. "For you were seen at L'Étoile," she said, "with a girl in nightclothes." He sighed. Word travels quickly. It always does when it concerns a count who must soon present himself to Lyon as a serious man, she replied. "What were you thinking?" "That she was alone," he said. "That someone had failed her. That she was being laughed at by people who should have known better. So you chose to sit with her," Madame Morel said, "to give them more to laugh at, including us." "Is that what they said?" he asked. "Some were charitable," she said. "They called it an eccentric moment of chivalry. Others worried that you had lost your mind. A few, only a few, described it as scandalous. A count with a girl who does not know the difference between her bedroom and a dining room." "She knows very well," he said sharply. She simply does not have the luxury of pretending her clothes are anything but what they are. His mother raised an eyebrow. You speak as if you know her intimately, she said. I do not, he replied, but I know enough to see she was more ashamed than anyone else in that room. Then she should not have gone, Madame Morel said. This is not our concern, Etienne. You cannot rescue every foolish girl who stumbles into the wrong place. So we leave them to be devoured, he asked. We focus on what matters, she said. And what matters? He asked quietly. She moved closer to him. Your name, she said. Your future. The position we have worked to secure. Monsieur Delacroix has shown great interest in supporting your political aspirations. His factories, his influence, his connections, all this can be yours if you do not throw it away for the sake of one evening's sentiment. This is about his daughter, Etienne said. Yes, she replied. Cécile, a sensible girl, well-raised, well-connected. Everyone expects, he interrupted softly. Yes, I know what everyone expects. She studied him. Do not be cruel, Etienne, she said. You know how hard it has been since your father died. Titles without money are fragile. We have maintained our position through care and alliances. You cannot afford to be reckless. Reckless, he repeated. Is it reckless to speak to a woman who has done nothing wrong but wear the wrong fabric in the wrong place? It is reckless, she said, to be seen with her when your every move is measured and weighed. He looked away toward the window. Outside, the street was quiet, respectable. Do you intend to see her again? His mother asked. The question surprised him. I do not know, he admitted. I had thought to ask her. Ask her what? She demanded. To what end, Etienne? You cannot marry a seamstress. You cannot appear in public with her without inviting mockery. You cannot flirt with her in private without dishonoring her. What path do you imagine lies between these? He said nothing. She softened her voice, just a little. You are not a boy any longer, she said. You do not have the freedom to follow every impulse. Sometimes we must do what is required, even when our hearts protest. You will have many chances to be kind, to be generous, to be noble. Choose them wisely. Do not squander them on a girl who cannot follow you into the life you must lead. He heard the concern under the severity. It did not comfort him. I must go out, he said at last. Where? She asked sharply. To walk, he said. To think. Think of your duty, she called after him as he left the room. He did think of it, all the way down the steps onto the street, through the wide squares and narrower alleys. He also thought of Amélie's face when she realized who he was. In his mind, he saw again the way she had pulled her coat around her, as if she could hide from the whole world. At midday, he found himself, without quite meaning to, in a café, where Monsieur Delacroix often conducted his conversations. Sure enough, the man was there, broad and confident, with a cup of chocolate in front of him, and a younger associate at his side. Count Morel, Delacroix boomed when he saw him. Come, sit. We were just speaking of you. Good afternoon, Etienne said, taking the offered seat. The associate, a wiry man with quick eyes, smiled. We heard a little story, he said. About last night. Delacroix chuckled. Do not be cruel, Armand, he said. The young must have their amusements. Still, you might choose better masks for your entertainments, my dear Count. There was no entertainment, Etienne said calmly. Only a girl left alone in the wrong place. So you felt compelled to play the gallant, Delacroix said. I understand. I was young once. It was not a game, Etienne replied. She did not seek attention. She was humiliated. The associate lifted a shoulder. She must have known how she looked, he said. Walking in like that. Perhaps she thought no one would notice, Delacroix said lightly. They never do, these little seamstresses, until it is too late. She is not an amusement, Etienne said, his voice sharpening despite himself. Delacroix studied him more closely. Come now, he said. I tease. We are among friends. But do be cautious, Etienne. People watch you. They listen. If you wish to enter our circles in a more serious way, you must be careful where you cast your shadow. I prefer to be careful where I cast my indifference, Etienne said. Delacroix raised his brows. A phrase worthy of the chamber, he said, but rhetoric will not save you if you decide to take a wrong step. Remember, politics is not only about ideas, it is very much about appearances. Yes, Etienne said quietly. I am discovering that. He left the cafe with his jaw tight. That afternoon, back in the workshop, Amelie's world narrowed to the line of stitches in front of her. The worst of the gossip had quieted, but the atmosphere had changed. A few of the girls were kinder than usual, offering her the better scissors, the smoother chair. Others stared at her when they thought she would not notice, measuring her in a new way. Near the end of the day, the bell above the door rang. "See who it is?" Madame Fournier said without looking up. One of the younger girls hurried to the front. She stopped abruptly. For a moment she seemed rooted to the floor. "Well," Madame Fournier called, "is it a client or a ghost?" The girl swallowed. "Madame," she whispered, "it is someone to see you." Madame Fournier set down her work with a sigh and walked to the front room. The other seamstresses craned their necks, trying to see around the doorway. Amélie stayed in her seat, her needle halfway through a seam. In the front room stood a man in a dark coat, his posture straight, his expression composed. The light from the window caught the sheen of his hair and the faint silver of his cufflinks. "Good afternoon," he said to Madame Fournier. She recognized quality instantly. Her tone shifted. "Good afternoon, monsieur," she said. "How may I assist you? Do you need a suit altered? This is mainly a ladies' establishment, but I am not here for a suit," he said. "My name is Etienne Morel." Her eyes widened. "Morel," she repeated. "As in the Count?" "Yes," he said. Behind her, the younger girl's hand flew to her mouth. The murmur traveled like a breeze through the workshop. A count. Here? Madame Fournier's mind raced. A count in her modest shop could mean opportunity or disaster. "How may we serve you, Your Excellency?" she asked carefully. He glanced past her into the main room where the seamstresses sat. "I wish to speak with one of your workers," he said. "Mademoiselle Amélie Durand." Every head turned toward her at once. Amélie's hands went cold. The needle slipped from her fingers and dropped into her lap. Madame Fournier looked from the Count to Amélie, then back again. "She is one of my best," she said slowly. "May I ask why you seek her?" "I owe her an apology," Etienne said, "and perhaps a conversation." The room seemed to hold its breath. Madame Fournier, practical even under shock, stepped aside. "Amélie," she called, "come here, if you please." Amélie stood on unsteady legs. She felt everyone's eyes on her as she walked to the front room. Her heart thudded so loudly she was sure he must hear it. She stopped a few steps away from him and dropped a quick, awkward curtsy. "Your Excellency," she murmured. His gaze softened. "Good afternoon, Mademoiselle Durand," he said. "I hope you will forgive this intrusion." Madame Fournier cleared her throat. "If this is a matter between you and my worker, monsieur," she said, "I must insist that her position here and my business remain respectable." "Of course," he replied at once. "I mean no harm to her reputation or to yours." He turned back to Amélie. "If your employer allows," he said gently, "may I speak with you for a few moments in private?" Madame Fournier's eyes moved between them as if weighing cloth. "In private?" she repeated. "In the courtyard, perhaps," Etienne said. "With the door in sight. I shall not keep her long." Madame Fournier hesitated. The other girls were still pretending to work, but their needles had slowed. "She is my worker," Madame said. "I cannot have her reputation dragged through the streets. People already talk more than they sow." "Madame," Etienne said quietly, "if any blame must be carried for what happened at l'Étoile, it is mine, not hers. I wish to tell her so." Something in his tone made her stiff posture ease a little. "Very well," she said. 10 minutes, the door stays open. If I hear so much as a raised voice, I shall come myself." "Of course," he replied. She turned to Amélie. "Go," she said. "Do not forget we have deadlines. Apologies do not finish hems." Amélie could barely feel her legs as she walked past him toward the rear of the shop. The courtyard was narrow and grey, with a small bench against one wall and a few pots with stubborn plants. The door remained ajar, as Madame had decreed. Amélie stayed near it. Etienne stepped out after her and let the door rest half open. For a moment neither spoke. "You should not have come here," she said at last, keeping her voice low. "They will talk even more now." "They already talk," he answered. "Perhaps this way I can correct some of what they say." She stared at him. "What can a count possibly know about what they say about a seamstress?" she asked. "You will go back to your world and forget it. I must live in it." He flinched slightly at the bitterness. "I have not forgotten," he said, "nor do I intend to." She folded her arms across her chest. "Then say what you came to say," she told him. "I must go back in." He took a breath. "I owe you an apology," he said, "for that night. I should have stopped you when you ran out. I should have done something more than sit there while the entire room stared." "You did nothing wrong," she said. "I am the one who walked in like a fool." "You did nothing wrong either," he replied. "You trusted the wrong promises. That is not a crime." She looked down at her hands. "I trusted my friends," she said. "I trusted that no one would look closely at someone as small as I am." He stepped closer, then seemed to remember the open door and stopped. "I saw you walk into that room," he said. "I saw your fear, and I saw you keep walking. That is not foolishness. It is courage." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Courage," she repeated. "There is a fine word for arriving at a restaurant in your nightclothes. It is not the cloth that mattered," he said softly. "It was the way you faced them. You did not run until you heard my name." Her shoulders tensed again. "Yes," she said. "That was the moment I understood exactly how far from their world I was. That is why I came," he said. "Not to remind you of that distance, but to bridge it, if you will let me." She glanced toward the door where shadows moved as the other girls pretended not to listen. "Bridge it?" she asked. "With what? Fine words?" "With time," he said. "With honesty. With simple meetings, if you wish." Her heart stumbled. She forced herself to keep her tone even. "Meetings?" she asked. "You mean you wish to see me again?" "Yes," he said, "if you will allow it." "Why?" she demanded. "So you may ease your conscience. So you may tell your friends, 'Look, I have a little story. The seamstress in her pajamas. I even visit her workplace to show how generous I am.'" He held her gaze, hurt flickering in his eyes, but not anger. "If I wanted a story for my friends," he said, "I would have stayed in that restaurant and laughed with them. Instead, I left as soon as you did, and I have thought of you every day since." Her breath caught at the quiet intensity of his words. "You know nothing of me," she said. "Nothing but the way I look when I am afraid." "Then let me learn more," he replied. "Let me meet you somewhere that is not a stage for other people's amusement. A place where we may speak as two people, without chandeliers or silk between us." She hesitated. "This is nonsense," she whispered. "You are a count. I am a seamstress. We do not meet." "Here we are," he said. "Meeting. That is accident," she replied. "Then allow me to make it a choice," he said. Silence stretched. From inside, someone coughed, and the sound of scissors on fabric resumed louder than before. "Where?" she asked finally, surprising herself. His face relaxed a little, as if he had been holding his breath. "There is a small cafe near the river," he said, "not far from the bridge where the flower sellers stand. The tables are plain, but the coffee is decent. Tomorrow, at 4, there will still be light." "And if I say no?" she asked. "Then I shall not trouble you again," he said quietly. "But I will still be glad to have known your name." She searched his expression, looking for mockery, vanity, calculation. All she saw was a man waiting, uncertain though he carried a title that usually opened doors before he knocked. "Tomorrow," she said at last, "at 4. A small smile touched his lips. "Thank you," he said. "I will be there." He bowed slightly, then stepped back into the front room. The voices inside dropped to a murmur as he walked through. Amélie stayed in the courtyard a moment longer, hand pressed to her fast-beating heart. When she went back inside, every face turned toward her. "Well?" Lucy whispered as she sat down. Amélie picked up her needle. "He came to apologize," she said. "For what?" Louise asked from across the table, unable to resist. "For being seen speaking to me," Amélie replied coolly. "Apparently counts do not enjoy being the subject of kitchen tales." A few of the girls snickered. Madame Fournier shot her a quick, sharp look, half reproach, half reluctant approval. "And?" Margot asked under her breath. "Is that all?" Amélie focused on her stitches. "That is all that concerns you," she said. The rest she kept locked behind her lips. The next day the hours crawled. She worked with such concentration that Madame Fournier remarked, "If you sewed like this every day, we could double our clients." By mid-afternoon, her palms were damp. When the clock in the corner chimed 3, she swallowed hard. "Madame," she said, "may I leave a little early today? I started before dawn to make up the time." Madame Fournier studied her. For what purpose? She asked. I have an errand, Amélie said. Not a frivolous one. The older woman's eyes softened. Go, she said. But if you return with tales of more restaurants, I shall tie you to your chair. I have had enough of restaurants, Amélie muttered. She changed her work apron for her better shawl, smoothed her hair as best she could, and stepped into the street. The café by the river was smaller than L'Étoile by far. Its windows were dusty, its chairs slightly uneven. A chalkboard outside listed simple dishes in crooked letters. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and bread. He was already there, seated at a table by the window. For a moment she stopped in the doorway. He rose as soon as he saw her. Good afternoon, he said. She nodded, suddenly unsure where to put her feet, her hands, her eyes. Good afternoon, she replied. He pulled out a chair for her. It was a clumsy gesture, almost boyish. May I? He asked. You already have, she said, and sat. He smiled, a little embarrassed, and took his seat again. A girl with a stained apron brought them 2 cups of coffee without waiting for an order. Evidently he had arranged it. Do you often do that? Amélie asked when the girl left. Do what? He asked. Arrive before everyone else, she said. It depends, he replied. Some occasions I would gladly miss. This one I did not wish to risk. She looked out at the river, where a small boat was moving slowly against the current. I nearly did not come, she admitted. I suspected as much, he said. I am grateful you overcame the temptation. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Truly, he considered his answer. Because I have spent most of my life speaking with people who say what they think I want to hear, he said. And because in one evening you said more truth than some say in years, even when you were embarrassed. I find I am hungry for that. Hungry for my embarrassment, she said wryly. How flattering. Hungry for your honesty, he corrected. There is a difference. She studied him over the rim of her cup. And what do you wish me to be honest about? She asked. My day, my landlord, the price of bread? All of it, he said, if you are willing. She hesitated, then shrugged. My landlord complains that I wash too much, she began. The price of bread went up again last week, so I cut my slice a little thinner and pretend I do not notice. One of the girls at the workshop is in love with the baker's son, but she pretends she's only interested in his flour. Is this the sort of truth you are hungry for, monsieur? He listened as if she were describing a new country. Yes, he said, because these are things discussed in rooms I sit in, but never by the people who live them. She raised a brow. What rooms? She asked. He hesitated. Offices, he said. Houses where decisions are made, places where men talk about workers and wages as if they were numbers on a page, not you, she frowned. They speak of us? She asked. Constantly, he said, without knowing you. That is the part that troubles me. And you are one of them, she said. When I enter those rooms, yes, he replied. When I leave them, I try to remember that I am also a man who can choose which words to listen to. She considered that. What do you choose now? She asked. To listen to you, he said simply. The answer sent a small warmth through her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. Over the following weeks, they met again and again. Sometimes in the same cafe, sometimes on a bench near the river, sometimes walking slowly through a square where children played and old men argued over newspapers. They spoke of everything and nothing. He asked her about her family. My parents are in the countryside, she said one afternoon, as they watched the water slip past. They have a small plot of land. Not good land, but enough to keep them alive. I came here because there was no room for all of us to eat from the same field. Do you visit them? He asked. When I can, she said. Which is less often than I would like. The train costs money. I send letters instead. My mother keeps them in a box, as if they were jewels. And your father? He asked. He pretends not to care about letters, she said, smiling faintly, but he reads them twice when he thinks no one is looking. He told her in turn about Paris and Lyon, about travelling between them, about halls where men spoke loudly of progress. Progress for whom? She asked. That is what I am trying to understand, he replied. He never hid that he was a count. He could hardly have done so. But he asked her early on to call him simply Monsieur when they were alone. Your Excellency sounds like a wall, he said. I would like fewer walls. She obeyed. though the title still hovered in her mind like a shadow. Their meetings did not go unnoticed forever. One chilly afternoon, as they walked along the riverside, Lucy appeared out of a side street, her basket on her arm. Her eyes widened when she saw them together. "Amélie?" she cried. "What? I mean, good day, monsieur." "Good day, mademoiselle," Etienne said politely. Lucy's gaze flicked between them. Her face was a mixture of delight and alarm. "I was just going to the market," she said. "I did not know you. That is, Oh, bread will burn if I do not hurry." She rushed past them, but not before squeezing Amélie's hand in passing. Later that evening, in their room, she cornered Amélie. "You are walking with him?" she demanded. "In public?" "Yes," Amélie said calmly. "In public. Do you have any idea what people will say?" Lucy whispered. "They already speak," Amélie replied. "I cannot sew their tongues shut." "He is a count," Lucy said, as if the word itself were heavy. "And you are you." "I am aware," Amélie said dryly. "Do you care for him?" Lucy asked suddenly. The question took her by surprise. She thought of his laugh when she compared braid to chains, of the way he listened to her complaints about aching fingers, of how his face softened when she spoke of her parents. "I do not know what I care," she said. "I know that when I speak, he hears more than my accent, and that is rare enough to make me foolish." Lucy sighed. "Just be careful," she said. "He can choose to step away from this whenever he wishes. You cannot." In another quarter of the city, talk was stirring too. At a dinner in the Delacroix house, Cécile sat beside her father, her hands folded neatly in her lap, as he and Madame Morel spoke quietly at the far end of the table. "They say he walks in the lower street sometimes," Monsieur Delacroix said. "Among the workers. It is good to see their faces," Etienne replied mildly. "They are the ones who support our factories." "So I do not object to seeing them," Delacroix said. "I object to being seen with them in ways that invite confusion." Madame Morel's gaze was cool. "I heard a name," she said. "Durant, a seamstress. Does that name mean anything to you, my son?" Etienne set down his glass. "It means she works hard for less money than she deserves," he said. "Does it mean more than that?" she pressed. Cécile looked at him across the flowers in the center of the table. Her expression was calm, but there was curiosity in her eyes. "Rumors are so tiresome, Madame Morel," Cécile said softly. "They make mountains of pebbles. I am sure your son knows what he is about." Her tone was kind, but the question inside it was clear. Later, in the carriage back home, Madame Morel spoke again. "Etienne," she said, "I will ask you directly. Are you involved with this girl?" "Involved is a heavy word," he replied. "We speak, we walk, we drink coffee. Coffee becomes something else very quickly," she said, "especially when everyone is watching and waiting for you to stumble." He looked out of the window, at the gas lamps passing by. "I cannot live my life entirely for their watching," he said. "At some point my steps must be my own." "Make them carefully," she said, "for your sake and for hers. The higher you stand, the more it hurts those below when you fall." He thought of that later, when he saw Amélie again. "Have you told them?" she asked one day. "Your mother, your important friends, have you told them you walk with a seamstress?" "Yes," he said. "In part." "In part?" she echoed. "I have not given them your name," he admitted. "But they know I spend time with someone they would not have chosen." She laughed quietly. "I can imagine the fainting," she said. "They do not faint," he said. "They sharpen their words instead." "And what do they sharpen them for?" she asked. "Me or you?" "Both," he said honestly. She nodded. "At least we will be cut equally," she said. He did not tell her then about Cécile. Every time he thought to speak the name, something stopped him. "You will frighten her away," some voice whispered. "Give yourself time. Understand what you want before you throw your world into chaos." And so he waited, and the secret grew heavier. The moment he could no longer avoid it came on a day that began with sunshine. They were sitting outside a small bakery, sharing a piece of brioche between them. Amélie was telling him about a client who refused to admit she had gained weight, insisting the dress had narrowed in the wardrobe. "It is always the dress," she said, "never the pastries." He smiled. "Perhaps dresses do have secret lives," he said, "growing jealous of other clothes and tightening in the night." She laughed, breaking off another piece of brioche. As she lifted it to her mouth, a carriage rolled slowly past. Inside, behind the glass, sat Cécile Delacroix. Her gloved hand rested on the edge of the window. Her eyes wandered lazily over the street, then sharpened as they fell on the table where Etienne and Amélie sat. Amélie did not see her at first. Etienne did. Their eyes met through the glass. Cécile's brows lifted just slightly. She did not look shocked. She looked surprised, curious, wounded, all at once. Then the carriage moved on, turning at the corner and disappearing. "What is it?" Amélie asked, following his gaze too late. "Nothing," he said quickly. "A carriage. Carriages pass every day," she said. "You looked as if one had run over your foot." He forced a smile. "I was only lost in thought," he said. He changed the subject. She let him, but the ease between them was thinner. That evening he found a note waiting for him at home. It was from Monsieur Delacroix. "We must speak soon," it read. "There are matters of appearance that concern us both." His mother also wished to speak. "I saw Cécile today," she said. "She asked after you, very politely. I think she suspects there is more to these rumors than you admit." He sat in his room that night, the note on his desk, the memory of Cécile's face in the carriage clear in his mind. "You are a coward," he told himself. "You have walked with one woman while another has been told all her life to expect your hand." He picked up a pen. The letter he wrote to Amélie was longer than he intended and shorter than he felt. "Mademoiselle Durand, there are things I should have said sooner, things that concern us both. I have been a coward in delaying them. If you can find it in your heart to grant me one more meeting, I beg you to come to L'Étoile tomorrow evening at 7. Yes, that place. I know what it means to you. That is precisely why I choose it. I do not wish our story there to remain only humiliation. If you cannot come, I shall understand. With respect, Etienne Morel." He sealed it and sent it in the morning with a trusted servant, instructing him to hand it directly to Amélie at the workshop. When the bell rang at Madame Fournier's, and the servant stepped inside, hat in hand, the girls froze. "I have a letter for Mademoiselle Amélie Durand," he said. "For me?" she asked, stunned. He handed her the envelope and left immediately, clearly instructed not to linger. She retreated to the back room and opened it with fingers that shook. As she read, her mouth went dry. L'Étoile, 7. Things he should have said sooner. Her first thought was simple and painful. He will tell me that this has gone far enough, that he must marry a girl from his own world, that I have been a pleasant distraction, nothing more. Her second thought was sharper. Better to hear it clearly than to wait for silence. She folded the letter and tucked it into her bodice. That evening, she stood before her small cracked mirror, wondering what to wear, not the pajama. Never that again. She chose her blue dress, smoothing it carefully, adjusting the patched hem until it fell as straight as possible. She fixed her hair with more care than usual, pinning back the loose strands. At the door, Lucy caught her hand. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Out," Amélie said. "Out where?" Margot added. "To settle something," Amélie replied. "With myself, if not with anyone else." Their eyes flicked to the edge of an envelope peeking from her bodice. "You are going to him," Lucy whispered. "I am going to listen," Amélie said. "What I do afterward will be my choice." They wanted to ask more, but her expression stopped them. The streets toward Rue des Capucins felt both familiar and foreign. Each step carried the weight of the past weeks, the laughter, the coffee cups, the shared stories. When she turned the last corner, L'Étoile rose before her, its windows glowing in the early evening. For a moment she simply stood there, watching the silhouettes move inside, hearing the faint clink of cutlery. Her hands were cold. She rubbed them together, then smoothed her skirt. "You will not run this time," she whispered to herself. She paused before the doors of L'Étoile, heart hammering, and reached for the handle. The maître d' recognized her at once. His eyes widened, then narrowed, then settled into something like wary politeness. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you have returned." "Yes," Amélie answered, "if that is permitted." "Of course," he murmured, stepping aside. "Your companion is already here." She followed his glance. Etienne sat at a small table along the side wall, not far from where they had once met. No one else shared it. A single candle burned between the empty glasses. He stood as she approached. "Good evening," he said softly. She looked him over quickly. The same careful suit, the same composed face. But his eyes were tired, shadowed, as if the last weeks had weighted them. "Good evening," she replied. He pulled out her chair, and she sat. Her back was straight, her hands were folded in her lap. For a few moments they simply listened to the clatter and murmur around them. "Thank you for coming," he said at last. "I nearly did not," she answered, "but I decided I would rather know than guess." He winced slightly. "You think you know already," he said. "That is my fault. I have let you walk beside me while keeping part of the path in shadow." "Yes," she said. "You have." He signaled for the waiter, who approached at once. "Wine?" Etienne asked her. "Water," she said. "I would like my head to be clear." He nodded. "Water for the lady, wine for me," he told the waiter. When the man left, Amélie leaned forward. "Say it," she said. "Whatever you must say it plainly. I am a seamstress, not a child. I can mend better when I know where the tear is." His mouth twisted into a sad smile. "Very well," he said. "I will not soften it." He rested his hands on the table, fingers intertwined. "You know that my mother and I are close to Monsieur Delacroix," he began. "His factories, his influence, and they have been important to our family since my father died." "You told me that much already," she said. "In pieces." "Yes," he said. "What I did not tell you is that, for years there has been an understanding between our families. Not written, not spoken aloud at every gathering, but present like a piece of furniture everyone walks around." "An understanding," she repeated. "About what?" "About a marriage," he said quietly. "Between myself and his daughter, Cécile." The candlelight seemed suddenly too bright. For a moment her hearing dulled, as if she were underwater. "A marriage," she echoed slowly. "Yes," he said. "From their point of view it is simple. A noble name, a solid fortune. Old blood, new money, everyone is pleased. The city smiles. The newspapers write polite lines about the union." "And you?" she asked. "Were you pleased?" He looked down at his hands. "I told myself I could be," he said. "Cécile is not unkind, she is intelligent. We understand each other in a way. We grew up meeting at dinners and parties. I thought we could build something decent. Not a grand love, perhaps, but a partnership." "And then?" she pressed. "And then I walked into L'Étoile one evening," he said, lifting his eyes to hers, "and saw a woman in a cotton pajama, trying not to crumble under everyone's gaze. I heard her speak of braid and sore fingers. I saw her walk into a world not made for her and refuse to bow her head, even when she wanted to run." She flushed at the memory. "That is not love," she said quietly. "That is curiosity." "It was more," he insisted. "I did not know it at once. I tried to pretend it was only an incident, a story that would fade. But every time I saw you afterward, every word you spoke, every time you laughed or argued, each one tugged a thread loose inside me. The life arranged for me began to look like a jacket that no longer fit." Her throat tightened. "And still," she said, "you did not tell me." "I wanted to," he said. "Each day, each time we met, but I was a coward. I told myself I needed time to be certain, to decide whether I would obey what was expected or fight for something else. I did not want to frighten you away before I understood my own heart. So instead, you let me walk with you in ignorance," she said. "You let me grow used to your voice, your questions, your kindness, while somewhere another woman sat in a house built partly for you, hearing whispers about her future husband." His face tightened. "Yes," he said, "and for that, I am ashamed." The waiter arrived with the wine and water. He set them down carefully, then slipped away. Amélie took a small sip, more to steady her hands than from thirst. "So this is what you wished to tell me," she said, "that there is a place prepared for you at another woman's side, that you have been promised and I have been a detour." "No," he said quickly. "You are not a detour. You are the road I did not know I wanted to take." "If that were true," she replied, "you would have told me the first time we met by the river. You would not have let me build dreams on ground you knew might collapse." He closed his eyes briefly. "You think I do not see that?" he asked. "I do, every day. I have spoken more honestly with you than with anyone else, yet on this one point I remained silent. I have wronged you." She stared at him, anger and hurt twisting inside her. "What do you want from me now?" she asked. "My forgiveness? My blessing to return to your proper bride?" I want neither, he said. I have not come to tell you goodbye, Amélie. I have come to tell you that I intend to refuse the life arranged for me, to refuse the alliance with Delacroix, to refuse a marriage that would be comfortable but empty. I have come to tell you that I choose you if you will have me. The words hung between them, loud and impossible. She laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. You choose me, she repeated, as if it were that simple. It is not simple, he said. It will cause trouble. It will anger men who prefer their plans to remain untouched. It will make my mother fear for our position. It will make people talk more than they already do, but it is still my choice. And what exactly are you asking of me? She said, her voice tightening. That I become the cause of your discomfort? The seamstress who made the Count lose his political allies? The little scandal they bring up at every dinner when conversation grows dull? No, he said. I am asking that you let me stand beside you while we face whatever comes. That you trust I would rather fight with you than sit in comfort beside someone I do not love. She stared at him. You say that as if you alone would pay the price, she said. But it is not your name they have laughed over already. It is mine. It is not you they call foolish for walking into L'Etoile in a pajama. It is me. If you break with your world for me, they will blame me. They will call me ambitious, scheming, ungrateful. They will say I trapped you. Every door you lose they will lay at my feet. His jaw clenched. Let them, he said. I know the truth. The truth inside your chest is not the truth on their tongues, she replied. You may carry yours and stand tall. I must carry both. And I am tired, Etienne. I am tired of being the joke in rooms I cannot even enter. Silence fell between them, heavy and raw. A few tables away, a couple laughed too loudly. Someone dropped a fork. The sounds felt distant. I thought you wanted honesty, he said quietly. So I brought it here. I am not asking you to rejoice. I am asking you to see that I am willing to risk what was planned for me. And I am asking you to see that I never asked you to risk anything, she replied. I did not stand before your mother and demand your hand. I did not go to Delacroix and cry that you had promised yourself to me. I did nothing but walk with you and answer when you spoke. The rest you chose without telling me. He reached across the table, then stopped, fingers curling. You are right, he said. You deserve better than this. Better than my late honesty. But I cannot go back and unsay the weeks we have lived. I can only offer you the truth now and ask, will you share what comes after with me? She looked at his hand, resting on the table between them. She pictured it lifting her from the narrow bed of her life, placing her in halls where every step would be measured. I do not know if I can, she whispered. Before he could answer, the sound of the door opening carried across the room. The maitre d's voice rose, full of practiced warmth. Madame Morel, he said. Monsieur Delacroix, Mademoiselle Cécile, what an honor. Amélie's head snapped toward the entrance. There they were, Madame Morel, tall and composed, with her gloved hands and calm eyes. Monsieur Delacroix, broad and confident, his waistcoat straining slightly. Cécile Delacroix, slim in pale silk, her posture perfect. They followed the maitre d' deeper into the restaurant. Madame Morel's gaze swept the room, the way one might scan a battlefield. For a heartbeat it passed over their table without seeing. Then it returned, sharpened. Her steps slowed. Mother, Etienne murmured under his breath. Monsieur Delacroix followed her look. Well, he said softly, there is our young friend. Cécile's eyes landed on Amélie then, on the plain blue dress, the patched hem, the hands clenched on the table. Recognition flickered in her face. She had heard the stories then. The maitre d' began to gesture toward another table. Madame Morel raised a hand. Here is fine, she said, and walked directly toward them. The room seemed to grow smaller. Amélie tried to breathe. Her ribs felt tight. Madame Morel stopped at their table, her expression composed, polite, and cold. Good evening, my son, she said. I did not expect to find you here. Good evening, mother, Etienne replied, rising. Monsieur Delacroix, Mademoiselle Cécile. Delacroix smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. Count, he said. I see you have cool company. Cécile inclined her head slightly, looking first at Etienne, then at Amélie. Madame Morel turned to Amélie at last. Mademoiselle, she said, we have not been formally introduced, but I confess I feel I know you. Your fame has travelled far for one who does not seek it. The words were smooth, the sting lay underneath. Amélie stood as well, her chair scraping. Madame, she murmured. Monsieur, Mademoiselle. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them tightly. I apologize if my presence here causes discomfort, she said. I did not know you did not know we would be here, Madame Morel finished. Of course. Coincidences have a way of multiplying when people forget their place. Mother, Etienne said sharply. She ignored him. You work in a sewing shop, I understand, she continued, eyes still on Amélie. A respectable occupation. It is admirable to earn one's bread with one's hands. Yes, Amélie said. It is. And yet, Madame Morel went on, there are certain lines that even admiration cannot cross, certain tables, certain company. Surely you understand that, Mademoiselle Durand? She spoke her name with an edge that made it sound like a torn thread. Amélie felt a heat rise in her chest. Shame and anger mixed until she could barely tell them apart. I understand that I was invited to meet here, she said quietly. I did not force open the door. Monsieur Delacroix cleared his throat. Madame Morel, he said, perhaps we should not— If not now, when? She snapped softly, without looking away from Amélie. Cécile stepped forward a little. Mother Morel, she said gently, this is hardly the place. It is exactly the place, Madame Morel replied. A public room for a public matter. She shifted her attention to her son. Etienne, she said, will you explain yourself? Or shall I allow the whispers to continue their work without correction? He met her gaze, then looked around at the room. Faces were turned toward them, pretending to be interested in bread and fish, but listening to every word. This is not the time, he said. It is long past time, she replied. You are seen in the streets, in cafes, now in L'Étoile, with this girl. People talk. Your allies grow uneasy. Monsieur Delacroix has been patient, but even patience has seams. Delacroix shifted uncomfortably. We are friends, he said. I only wish to avoid misunderstanding. Then we will clear it, Madame Morel said. Now, she looked back at Amélie. Mademoiselle, she said, perhaps no one has explained to you what your acquaintance with my son suggests to others. They do not think, how charming, a count taking an interest in a seamstress's opinions on bread and braid. They think, how like a man of his position to amuse himself with a girl of no consequence while serious matters wait. You may not care about your own reputation. I must care about his. I do care, Amélie said, her voice shaking. I care more than you imagine. That is why this pains me. And yet you came, Madame Morel replied. Twice now. Once in a state of undress, once patched but presentable. Is this how your mother raised you, Mademoiselle Durand? A murmur passed through the room. Tears burned behind Amélie's eyes. She swallowed them down. My mother raised me to work, she said. To be honest, to keep my head high even when others wished me to bow. She did not raise me to be a spectacle. That honor has been thrust upon me. Cécile's expression changed at that, a flicker of sympathy. Madame Morel's lips pressed together. And my son, she said, turning back to him. How did I raise you, Etienne? To think, he said. To choose. To honor your name, she countered. To shoulder responsibility. To understand that your life is not your own alone. That is what I taught you. And now I see you risking all of it for what? For walks by the river and conversations in cheap cafes? For a girl you cannot marry without dragging us both into ruin? The word hung there. Marry. The room fell utterly still. Amélie's breath caught. She looked at Etienne. His face, pale under the candlelight, had hardened with resolve. You assume too much, mother, he said quietly. Both about ruin and about what I can and cannot do. Monsieur Delacroix stepped in, hands raised as if smoothing a cloth. There is no need for raised tempers, he said. We are all reasonable people. Count, you know the regard we have for you, for your mother. Our families have long considered a closer union. My daughter has never complained of that prospect. Cécile's voice was calm. No, she said, I have not. She looked at Amélie, really looked, as if seeing her not as a story but as a person. I confess, Cécile said, I did not expect to meet you like this, mademoiselle. I heard the tales and thought them cruel. It seems you are not the flirt they described, but rather someone caught in other people's nets. Enough, Madame Morel said sharply. This is not a tea party. On the contrary, Etienne said, this is an accounting. He turned to face them all, his shoulders straight. "You want me to explain," he said. "Very well, I will." He took a breath, his voice carrying more clearly. "I have walked with Mademoiselle Durant," he said. "I have spoken with her. I have come to know her as more than a girl in a restaurant or a worker behind a counter. I have listened to her speak of her life, her work, her family, and in doing so I have realized that much of what we call duty is only habit, dressed in fine cloth." A few gasps answered that. "Etienne," his mother warned. He went on. "You speak of alliances, of futures arranged," he said to Delacroix. "You speak of my name as if it were a coin to be traded, but it is my life that will be lived inside whatever bargain you strike. And I find that I cannot, in honesty, promise myself to your daughter when my heart belongs to someone else." He looked straight at Amélie then. "I love her," he said, the words simple and clear. "I love Mademoiselle Amélie Durant, seamstress, worker, the woman who walked into this place once wearing a pajama and a courage none of you saw because you were too busy laughing." The room seemed to exhale in astonishment. Amélie's heart slammed against her ribs. "Etienne," his mother whispered, white with shock. Delacroix's face flushed dark. "Do you realize what you are saying?" he demanded. "Yes," Etienne said. "For the first time in a long time, I know exactly what I am saying. I would rather stand with her and face every smirk in this city than sit at any table where I must pretend she is nothing to me." He reached for Amélie's hand and took it gently, his fingers warm around hers. Gasps rippled through the room. Amélie felt as if the floor had tilted. Her hand trembled in his. "This is madness," Madame Morel hissed. "You would throw away years of careful work, the support of powerful men, the respect of society, for a girl who does not even own a proper gown?" He turned to her. "If society's respect depends on me abandoning my conscience," he said, "then it is not worth keeping." He looked at Delacroix. "I will not marry your daughter," he said, "not because she lacks value, but because she deserves a husband who can give her his whole heart. That man is not me." Cécile's chin lifted, pride and hurt warring in her eyes. "I appreciate your honesty, Count," she said. "I would not wish to be anyone's consolation prize. Better a clean break than a lifetime of polite regret." Delacroix's jaw worked. "You embarrass us," he said. "Here, now, you make a mockery of our goodwill." "I regret any pain caused," Etienne said. "But I will not apologize for refusing to live a lie." He looked at Amélie again, his gaze full of pleading now. "You see," he said softly. "I told you I would choose, I have. Whatever comes now, I face it with eyes open. If you stand with me, I will count myself fortunate beyond measure." She could not speak at first. The room was a blur of faces, strands of conversation, the clink of glasses. Her own pulse roared in her ears. He had just burned bridges in front of everyone, for her. If I say yes, she thought, every door that closes for him will be blamed on me. Every whisper will carry my name. I will be the seamstress who toppled a count's future. She looked at his hand holding hers, then at his mother's stricken face, at Delacroix's anger, at Cécile's wounded dignity. She thought of her parents in their small house, of letters in a box, of the girls in the workshop watching, of Madame Fournier's stern protectiveness. Slowly she withdrew her hand from his. His fingers loosened at once, as if he had never had the right to hold on. "No," she said quietly. The word cut more cleanly than any knife. His face went still. "No?" he repeated. "I cannot," she said, forcing the words out past the lump in her throat. "I cannot be the reason your world turns its back on you. I cannot carry the weight of your mother's disappointment, of Monsieur Delacroix's anger, of every gossip's tongue. I struggle enough with my own burdens. I will not take on yours as well." "You would not be alone," he said hoarsely. "I would be there, with you." When they stared, when they whispered. "You would stand tall," she said. "You have been taught to. I would flinch. I know myself. I'm not made of polished stone. I'm made of cloth. I fray." Tears blurred her sight. She blinked them away. "You say you love me," she continued. "And perhaps you do. But love that asks me to be the shield for your choices is not the love I can accept. You chose to speak here. You chose to defy them. Good. That is your path. I choose not to tie my fate to this storm." "Amélie," he whispered. "Please." She shook her head. "No," she said again. "I will not build my life on the ruins of yours." Even if you insist you do not see them as ruins. Maybe one day you will thank me for this, or hate me. I cannot decide that for you, I can only decide for myself. She turned to Madame Morel and Delacroix, her voice steadying. You need not fear that I will cling to him, she said. I have too much pride for that. Whatever tales you have heard about me, you may correct them now. I am not a trap. I am only a woman who met a man in the wrong place and let her heart wander too far. Cécile studied her, then gave a small, grave nod. I believe you, she said. Madame Morel's eyes glistened, though no tears fell. You would walk away, she said slowly. Even after he has said all this? After he has thrown his lot openly with you? I would, Amélie said, because I care for him, and because I care for myself. There is a life pinned and waiting for me. It may not be stitched with gold, but it is mine. I will not tear it apart for a love that would make me a target in every room I enter. The words tasted bitter and true. She looked at Etienne one last time. Do not follow me, she said softly. Not tonight. Let this be the seam that closes. Is this truly what you want? He asked, his voice breaking. No, she whispered, but it is what I must choose. She curtsied, not to him alone, but to the whole stunned group, then stepped away from the table. No one blocked her path. The maitre d' scrambled out of her way. Diners pretended to look down at their plates, eyes sneaking up as she passed. She kept her back straight and her steps even. When she reached the door, she paused for half a breath, then pushed it open and stepped into the night. The air was cold on her damp cheeks. She walked home without seeing much, only the stones ahead of her and the faint light of the moon. In her small room, she shut the door quietly behind her. The silence pressed close. She did not undress at once. She sat on the bed, hands in her lap, feeling the echo of his fingers still there. So this is how it ends, she murmured. Not with laughter in pajamas, not with a grand promise, but with a choice that tore straight through her. At the same time, in his house, Etienne stood alone in his study. The confrontation at L'Étoile replayed itself in fragments. His declaration, his mother's face, Delacroix's anger, Cécile's composure, Amélie's hand slipping from his. No. One word, and everything shifted. He went to the window and looked out over the dark street. You say no to protect me, he said softly, as if she were there. Who will protect you now, stubborn girl? His chest ached in a way he had no name for. Behind him, the door stood half open. He could hear his mother's subdued steps somewhere in the house, the muted sounds of servants, the ordinary life continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had. He leaned his forehead against the cool glass and closed his eyes, knowing that, for the first time since he met her, there was no next meeting to imagine, no letter to write, no excuse to cross the city. Only the quiet, too bright and too empty, and two hearts in different parts of Lyon trying to learn how to beat around the absence of the other. Spring crept over Lyon slowly. Cold mornings softened. The air smelled less of smoke and more of damp stone warming in the sun. People spoke in the streets of new fashions, new elections, new gossip. The story of the girl in pajamas and the Count was no longer new. It had hardened into something else. Heard a tale told with a shrug, a lift of the eyebrows, a laugh that was not as sharp as before. In Madame Fournier's workshop, life went on. Hand me the blue thread, please, Amélie said one morning. Lucie passed it without speaking. She had learned to read the set of Amélie's mouth. That morning it was calm. Did you hear? Louise whispered across the table. Monsieur Delacroix's daughter has gone to visit family in the country. Some say she went to escape the embarrassment. Embarrassment? Another girl asked. Whose? His, hers, or the Count's? Everyone's, Louise said dramatically. They say he refused her, in public, because of a seamstress. The word hung in the air like dust. Amélie kept sewing. What else do they say? Madame Fournier asked briskly from the cutting table. That the moon has turned to cheese? Gossip, girls, nothing more. Let it pass. We have sleeves that care nothing for Counts. She knew more than she admitted. 2 days earlier, one of their wealthy clients had mentioned it while being fitted. The match with the Delacroix girl is off, it seems, the client had said, arms outstretched as Madame pinned. They say he spoke of love with a worker. Can you imagine? Madame had answered only, People imagine many things, Madame, most of them wrong, and kept pinning. Now she watched Amélie from the corner of her eye. The girl had grown quieter in the weeks since L'Etoile. Not broken, not dull, just quieter. Her stitches had become even more precise, as if all the restlessness in her heart had poured into thread. During the midday break, Lucy sat beside her on the bench in the courtyard. "Do you hear them?" she asked. "I have ears," Amélie said. "They make you the cause of everything," Lucy said darkly. "The Count's rebellion, the broken match, the coming fall of the world." "The world has always been falling, according to them," Amélie replied. "They simply like to name someone to blame." "And you?" Lucy asked softly. "Whom do you blame?" Amélie thought of that night. The candlelight on his face, his hand around hers, the way her own voice had sounded when she said no. "No one," she said finally. "Or everyone. Or perhaps simply life. You still care for him," Lucy murmured. "That is my business," Amélie said, but her tone was gentle. Lucy sighed. "He is a stubborn man," she said. "Perhaps he will return." "He already did once," Amélie said. "You saw what that brought. No, I made my choice. I will live with it." She said it often enough that the words began to feel like truth. Across the city, in a house that had once felt like a cage, and now felt too large for its owner, Etienne sat at his desk, a blank sheet of paper in front of him. His mother stood by the fireplace. "Monsieur Delacroix was measured," she said. "He has withdrawn his promise to support your candidacy directly, but he did not speak of enmity. He will not set his newspapers against you, for now." "Because of Cécile," Etienne said. "She has more sense than all of us. She behaved with dignity," his mother agreed. "More than can be said of some others present that evening, myself included." He glanced at her. "It is not my wish to make enemies," he said. "Only to live with my own conscience." "You have made that quite clear," she replied. "The entire restaurant heard you." "Are you ashamed?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said, "but not only of you. Of myself for the words I flung at that girl. I have thought of them every night since. A mother's tongue can wound more deeply than a stranger's. I forgot that she is someone's daughter as you are mine." He was silent. She came closer. "I do not understand all your choices," she said. "I do not pretend to, but I see that you will not bend on this. You have given up more than I expected you would for the sake of love." The word came awkwardly to her lips. "I have done what I can to limit the damage, spoken with people, smoothed some ruffled feathers. If you insist on building your own path, at least walk it with your head up." He looked at her surprised. "You are not going to forbid me?" he asked. "I tried forbidding you once," she said. "You stood in a restaurant and defied me in front of half the city. I have no desire to repeat the scene in every room we enter." She hesitated. "And besides," she added, voice lower, "your father, for all his talk of alliances, did not marry me because of dowries. He chose me over a wealthier match. I had forgotten that until recently. Perhaps the world changed me more than I realized." The admission hung between them like an unexpected gift. "What are you saying, Mother?" he asked. "I am saying," she sighed, "that if you mean to make this girl your wife, you had better do it properly, not with half-hidden walks and dramatic speeches in restaurants, but with a clear proposal in her world as well as ours. Or let her go entirely and stop tearing yourself in two." A spark lit in his chest. "You would accept her?" he asked. "I did not say that," she replied. "Acceptance is a long road, but I will not stand between you if you are determined. I will not bless it loudly at first either," she added quickly. "Do not expect miracles, only I will not stand in the doorway with a locked key." He almost laughed. "That is more generosity than I hoped for," he said. She sniffed. "Do not squander it," she said, "and do not keep her waiting. If the girl has any sense, she will have begun already to sew herself a wall around her heart. If you mean to climb it, you had better go now, while the stones are still loose." He stood so quickly his chair scraped. "Now?" he asked. "Unless you plan to think on it for another month," she said, "in which case sit. We can discuss the price of coal instead." He grabbed his coat. "I will return," he said. "I assumed as much," she replied dryly. "The house is still yours, unless you plan to give it to the first seamstress you meet." He paused at the door. "Mother," he said. "Yes?" she asked without turning. "Thank you." She flicked her hand as if shooing a fly. "Go," she said, "before I change my mind and arrange you a marriage with the baker's daughter just to restore balance." He left with a strange, buoyant fear in his chest. At the workshop, the afternoon light slanted through the windows. Dust danced in its beams. "Careful with that hem," Madame Fournier said. "If you make it too short, Madame Leroy will blame me and not her vanity." "Yes, Madame," Amélie answered. Her fingers moved on their own. Her mind was somewhere between L'Étoile and the river, in scenes she tried to fold away like finished garments. The bell above the door rang. "Another client," Madame muttered. "If it is Madame Girard, tell her—" Her words stopped. The room stilled. Amélie did not look up at once. She had learned that most shocks hurt less if you gave them a heartbeat to soften. Then she heard his voice. "Good afternoon, Madame Fournier." Her hands froze. Scissors paused. Needles stopped mid-air. Even Louise forgot to whisper. Madame Fournier walked to the front, smoothing her apron. "Good afternoon, monsieur," she said carefully. "We are rather busy. If you wish to commission work, we can speak of it. Otherwise—" "I am not here for work," he said. "Not the kind done with cloth, at least." His gaze found Amélie through the doorway. Their eyes met. Her heart leapt, then steadied, then began to beat too fast. He looked tired, but clearer, as if some decision had straightened his spine. "Then for what are you here, monsieur?" Madame asked. There was protectiveness in her tone. "My girls have little enough peace as it is. I am here for Mademoiselle Durand," he said, "with your permission." "Again," Louise muttered under her breath. "He is determined to ruin her rhythms." Madame shot her a look sharp enough to cut thread. "She is working," she said to Etienne. "I cannot have her running out every time a gentleman feels a tug on his heart." "This is the last time I will ask," he said. "One way or another." The quiet conviction in his voice made her pause. She turned to Amélie. "Well," she asked, "do you wish to hear what he has to say? Or shall I tell him to take his boots elsewhere?" All eyes swung to her. Amélie swallowed. "I will listen," she said. Her voice was steady, though her knees felt weak. Madame nodded. 5 minutes, she said. "In the front. Door open. If I hear a sob, I shall come beat him with a measuring stick." A few nervous chuckles broke the tension. Amélie rose and walked to the front. Etienne waited near the counter, hat in hand. He did not reach for her. He seemed afraid even of his own hands. "Good afternoon, Mademoiselle Durand," he said quietly. "Good afternoon, monsieur," she replied. "This is awkward," he said. "I had imagined a dozen grand speeches. They all deserted me when I saw your face." "Then perhaps say something simple," she suggested, feeling the edge of her own fear soften. He nodded. "Very well," he said. "The simple truth is this. Since the night at L'Étoile, I have eaten, slept, walked, and spoken like a man going through movements he does not feel. I thought I knew what it meant to be alone before I met you. I was wrong. It is only since you left that I have learned it properly." "That is not entirely simple," she murmured. "I will try again," he said. "I love you. I have broken with Delacroix. There will be no marriage with Cécile. My mother knows it, and though she grumbles, she has accepted that she cannot arrange my heart like furniture. I have told them you are not to blame. I have chosen this path without asking anything from you. The cost is mine. I am here now to ask if you will walk it with me, not because you must or because you fear you owe me, but because you want to." She stared at him. "You have really broken with them?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Cécile herself told me she would rather be free than tied to a man who looks at another woman the way I look at you." "And your mother?" she asked. "She has agreed to meet you," he said. "She even promised not to bring sharp words to the first conversation, only sharp looks. It is progress." Despite herself, a small smile tugged at her lips. "She truly said that?" she asked. "Not in those exact words," he admitted, "but close enough." He took a breath. "I do not pretend there will be no whispers," he said. "There will. People will talk in salons and in markets. Some will never fully accept you. Some will never fully accept me for choosing you. But I can promise this. I will never ask you to stand alone against them. I will always stand where the stones are thrown most heavily. I will not hide you. I will not be ashamed. And if in time we have a home, it will not be a prison of etiquette, but a house where your laughter is not out of place." Heat rose to her cheeks. "You speak as if marriage is already decided," she said. "That depends entirely on you," he replied. "I can decide whom I will ask. I cannot decide what answer she will give." The room behind them was full of very quiet seamstresses, pretending to be deaf. Amélie heard her own heart pounding. "I do not know how to be a countess," she said. "I do not know which fork to use or which words to say when old men talk of politics. I do not know how to walk in rooms where the floor is polished enough to show every flaw. I have seen more countesses who do not know those things than you imagine," he said. "The only knowledge that matters to me is that you will tell me the truth when everyone else is flattering me, and that you will not let me become a man who forgets why he entered those rooms at all." She looked down at her hands. "My life is here," she said, "in thread and cloth in this street with these girls, with Madame. I do not know how to leave it." "Then we will not tear it away," he said at once. "If we wed, I do not ask you to become someone else. I ask you to bring yourself as you are. If you wish to keep sewing, we will find a way. If you wish to have a small workshop of your own one day, we will make that possible. My world has enough ornaments. It needs someone who knows how things are made." Her eyes stung. "And if I say no again," she whispered. "Then I will bow," he said, "and I will not trouble you any more. I will live with the knowledge that I loved once and was not chosen. It will hurt, but I will not chase you as if you were prey." She studied his face. The last time she had seen him so close, it had been full of shock and pain in the candlelight. Now there was pain still, but behind it, something calmer. A man who had counted the cost and still come. "I said no to protect you," she said slowly, "and to protect myself." "I know," he said. "It was the bravest no I have ever heard, and the one that hurt me most." Silence stretched. At last, she spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "If I say yes," she said, "I do it on one condition." "Name it," he said instantly. "That you never again keep me in the dark to spare me," she said. "No hidden understandings, no half-truths. If the city decides tomorrow to hate you or adore you, I want to know it the same day you do. If your mother scolds you, I want to hear the words, not the softened version. If I am to walk beside you, I refuse to walk blind." He nodded. "I swear it," he said. "On my name, such as it is, and on whatever future we may share." She took a breath that felt like the first after long submersion. "Then," she said softly, "yes." His eyes closed for a heartbeat, as if steadying himself against a wave. When he opened them, they shone. "Yes," he repeated, almost not trusting his own ears. "Yes," she said, smiling through sudden tears. "Yes, I will marry you, foolish Count." The workshop erupted. Needles flew. Lucy let out a small scream. Margot clapped her hands over her mouth and then dropped them to clap outright. Even Madame Fournier's stern mouth twitched upward. "How you are going to marry a count?" Louise hissed, half jealous, half awestruck. "No," Amélie said, laughing and crying at once. "I am going to marry a man who happens to be a count." Madame Fournier stepped forward. "Is this true?" she asked Etienne. "You intend to make her your wife? Not your plaything, not your charity case?" He met her gaze squarely. "I intend to make her my wife," he said, "and to treat her as poorly as I would treat the Queen of France if we still had one, which is to say with excessive respect and occasional annoyance when she is right and I am wrong." A ripple of laughter ran through the room. "Then I will say this," Madame said. "If you harm her, I will come to your grand house with this measuring stick and hit you in front of all your guests." "I believe you," he said gravely. She nodded, satisfied. "In that case," she added, "you may take her for the rest of the afternoon. She will be useless with a needle now. But tomorrow she returns. Until you put a ring on her finger, she is still my worker." "Yes, Madame," Amélie said meekly. Etienne offered his arm. "May I escort you to the door, future Madame, whatever name you choose for yourself?" he asked. She slipped her hand through his arm. "To the door, monsieur," she said. "No further. There are things to arrange, parents to write to, dresses to stitch." "Dresses?" he echoed. "I will not be married in a borrowed gown," she replied. "I will make my own. I trust my stitches more than any madam in the city." He smiled. "I trust them too," he said. News travelled fast. By the time the banns were announced at the small church, half the neighbourhood knew. Some shook their heads, some grinned, some refused to believe it until they saw the Count himself, sitting in a plain pew beside a seamstress with calloused hands. Amélie's parents came from the countryside, dressed in their best, bewildered but proud. Her mother cried when she first saw the house where her daughter would live. "It is too big," she whispered. "You will get lost." "I will mark the doors with thread," Amélie said, holding her tightly. "I always find my way when there is thread." Her father shook Etienne's hand so hard he nearly pulled his arm off. "If you make her unhappy," he said, eyes shining, "I will come with my shovel and make a hole where your garden used to be." "I will remember that," Etienne replied. Madame Morel met them at the threshold, composed but less rigid. She took Amélie's hands. "Welcome," she said simply. Amélie searched her face for contempt and found instead something like resignation and a cautious respect. "Thank you," she said. Cécile did not attend the wedding, but a bouquet of wildflowers arrived that morning with a note. "May your courage bring you happiness. Better an honest scandal than a quiet lie. Cécile Delacroix." The wedding itself was not grand. The church was modest. The flowers were simple. The most precious thing in the room was the way everyone's eyes softened when the couple spoke their vows. "I will not promise you a quiet life," Etienne said when the priest asked for his pledge, "but I will promise you a true one." "I will not promise always to be brave," Amélie replied, "but I will promise not to run when you need me." They left the church to sounds of clapping, some delighted, some stunned. Outside in the small square, Lucy whispered to Margot, "Do we curtsy or wave?" and ended up doing both, tripping over her feet. Later, when the guests had been fed and the last cousin had been coaxed toward the door, the house finally grew quiet. In a sitting room that would now be theirs, Amélie stood by the window looking out over Lyon. She heard his steps behind her. "Tired?" he asked. "Exhausted," she admitted. "My cheeks hurt from smiling. My hands, too, from all the shaking." "That will pass," he said. "The shaking, at least, the smiling I hope to keep." He came closer, something wrapped in tissue paper in his hands. "What is that?" she asked. "A wedding gift," he said. "From me to you." "We have already received enough gifts," she said. "I saw 3 trays and a clock and a hideous porcelain dog." "This one is different," he said. "This one is only from me." He held it out. She hesitated, then took it and unwrapped the paper. Inside lay a nightgown, cotton. Soft? Fine. The seams were perfect. The buttons were small and neat. Along the collar, almost invisible, a line of delicate stitching formed a tiny pattern of stars. Beside it was a matching robe, light and warm. She stared, then laughed, then felt tears prick her eyes. "A nightgown," she said. "Have you learned nothing?" "I have learned everything," he said. "I learned that the first time I saw you, you wore cotton with more dignity than half the silk in the room. I learned that what you wear does not change who you are. I learned that courage can look like a girl in pajamas pretending not to be afraid." She ran her fingers along the soft fabric. "You had this made?" she asked. "I sewed every stitch myself," he said solemnly. She snorted. "You cannot even thread a needle," she said. "True," he admitted. "But I chose the cloth, and I told the seamstress exactly what I wanted. It seemed only fair that a seamstress should make the first garment of our married life." "It is beautiful," she said. "It is cotton," he replied, "so that if you ever decide again to walk into a fine room in your nightclothes, you may do it knowing that at least they are well designed." She laughed, the sound bright and free. "You are impossible," she said. "I am yours," he answered. She folded the nightgown and robe carefully and laid them on a chair. Then she turned back to him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Leaving the path they drew for you?" He thought for a moment. "I regret that it hurt some decent people," he said. "Cécile, a little. My mother, for a time. I regret that it gave fools something new to chatter about. But you? No. Choosing you is the one decision I do not regret, even when it frightens me." "It frightens you?" she asked. "Of course," he said. "You are terribly frightening. You wield needles." She stepped closer, resting her forehead lightly against his chest. "You know," she murmured, "when I came to this city, I thought my life would be small forever. A needle, a bed, a street. I did not imagine all this." "All this?" he teased. "A slightly drafty house and a man who talks too much?" "A life where my humiliation became the beginning of something better," she said. "A life where I walked into a restaurant in my pajamas and walked out into my future." He wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if she was something precious and breakable and strong all at once. "Remind me of that," he said softly, when the days grow heavy, that all of this began because you were too tired to change clothes. She smiled against him. I was not too tired, she said. I was too proud. Ah, he said. Then it seems your pride has good taste. Outside, the city moved on. People still told the story of the girl in pajamas and the Count. Some told it as a joke, some as a warning, some as a curious little legend. But those who had watched more closely, the seamstresses, the mother who had learned to step aside, the girl who had seeded a groom, the parents from the countryside, knew it was not truly a tale about pajamas or titles. It was a story about how one moment of humiliation did not close a life, but opened it. And if years later, anyone asked Amélie how she managed to cross the distance between her narrow bed and this wider world, she would only laugh and say, with a cotton pajama, a stubborn heart, and a man foolish enough to fall in love at first sight with both. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.